Over the past couple of weeks, I've talked about several topics that, while I enjoyed them, they all tended to be parts of mainstream culture, meaning it was easy for people to get behind for one reason or another. It would only be normal if I kept that trend going, but I want to stop and dive into another part of my childhood that was so amazing to me: the internet. More specifically, the world of flash games and movies. I was in the early stages of my Mario craze when I stumbled across some neat and very impressive animations of him doing things that I would never imagine any official Nintendo name would allow him to do. Fighting off crazy mecha robots in Super Mario Bros. Z with flashy yet amazing fight scenes, and Sonic got his moments too, is a great example. There are also several Flash games that were just as fun to watch as they were to play. Fancy Pants, Bloons Tower Defense, Happy Wheels, but there is one that stood above all those and set out to not only be the animated version of John Wick on drugs, but to tell a story that was very up in the air and is still being told to this day. The Madness series was created by a man named Matt Jolly, who goes by Crinkles on a site called Newgrounds. He is responsible for what I believe to be some of the greatest 5 to 9 minutes of non-stop mania, mayhem, and madness that any sane man could put into a cartoon, at least for its time. The story follows a collective cast, each having their own characteristics. There is Hank, the man who just won't die, but has been identified as a protagonist of the story. His later acquired partners Deimos and Sanford, who, when they aren't being shot at, like to kick back a little and let the relaxing auras kick in, and Jesus. And I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. The style invokes an early Hotline Miami feel with the fast-paced, blunt-force room-after-room action, but there is a method to the madness. Each character has their own way of fighting off the gangs of goons in each room, like Hank, who is more free-flowing and is very versatile in his fighting style, whereas with Jesus he is more brute force and no nonsense considering he is literally Jesus, and Deimos and Sanford have a more tactical focus with bits and pieces of Hank's free-flow nature thrown in there. On top of that, there is also the character designs, which lead into their own unique right, since they kinda look like marshmallow people who had their arms cut off and the hands just float. Also, their heads don't have necks. For the visual style, everything in these shorts are gray or a stoic black for certain weapons. Everything except the blood. In my eyes, it is to emphasize the impact of each blow, shot, slice, etc. to give it its own weirdly bland yet colorful feeling that pops with each action scene. Going into the story, this is probably where it both shines and falters. Starting from the first episode, you know it's a no-nonsense plot that just lets the action speak for itself. One after the other, it's just Hank going to town on whoever stands in his way, and this works for every episode they have done it for. Until we get to the latest few, where it actually tries to tell a story with what we've been given, which, outside of a few textual cues, didn't really feel like much. The story was confusing because of the lack of voices or narrative. I feel like if I'm going to go back to the Hotline Miami comparison, the very first few episodes were like Hotline Miami 1. There's no real narrative to pick up on aside from a few contextual clues, whereas with, say, episode 8 and on, they tried to tell a story that got kind of jumbled in its own weird way. Overall, revisiting this series was time well spent, as a flood of memories came back to me. There are several things though that I forgot to mention, like Madness Day, which celebrates the conception of the series on Newgrounds, and a Flash game that made me feel like such a badass, despite it being just a run-and-gun simple aim test. And like I said before, these shorts are still coming out with little shorter shorts that help pass the time, while the main storyline is being worked on. And until next time, farewell.